Hey. All right. There it is. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me, clear my throat. Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show podcast version thereof. I want to jump right into it. I am doing a podcast version tonight for a multitude of reasons. The the two most pertinent reasons is that I'm not feeling the best tonight. But there's a message that I have to convey that I want to convey. The most important reason is that I have a message that I want to convey that needs my utmost concentration. I don't want to have to click any other buttons. I just want to talk. It's dawning on me more and more and more. The reason we never get closer to a progressive America is because we don't really engage in the we don't engage in the boring topic of taxes. And we've allowed it to become a boring topic. I'm looking online today as I'm giving all of my tax messages, morning, afternoon, and dinner and lunch or whatever, evening. I gave messages about the truth about tax policy. And it's not sexy. It's not exciting. It's not like, it's not an issue that drives people and their passions. But the ledger is so tilted in favor of the Republican Party because that is 100% what drives them. 100% of Republican Party participation in politics is for nothing more than tax cuts. And to get away, for their donors, get away with the fewest dollars possible in taxation. That's their sole purpose. And then I'm looking at, I exist in quite a few Twitter spaces, Twitter realms, if you would. And I'm talking about it and I'm realizing nobody on the progressive side of the spectrum talks about tax policy with the fervor and the intensity and the frequency of the Republican Party. There, I saw Nancy Pelosi, and it's funny, she's like one of the most hated people in the further left, right? The far left. A lot of people just really dislike her, but I'm looking at who's leading the charge right now against the Republican Party, getting ready to pass the most I don't even have the adjective to describe it, right? But it's the most Reagan-esque trickle-down economics version of a tax plan that we've seen in 30 years. And Nancy Pelosi is like a voice crying in the wilderness. She's like one of the few people. I saw a clip of her on Joy Ann Reid. Don't ask me why I watched Joy. I just saw the clip, right? I saw the clip. I'm not a fan of Joy, but and here's the reason why. Because Nancy Pelosi was on there, the House Minority Leader, Nancy Pelosi was on there letting it be known that this is Armageddon. What Republicans are getting ready to do in tax policy is our economic Armageddon. They are getting ready to relinquish all responsibility to the society from which they derive their wealth. They're saying we're going to sit down at the table with America. We're going to eat the biggest portion and we're going to stick the poor people with the tab. This is what she's saying. And what's her name? Joy Ann Reid was like, okay, yeah. Okay, great. Next topic. And I'm like, no. This is the most important topic for anyone who wants to do anything progressive whatsoever. I mean, it's not as sexy as, I don't know, the fight to push back against the Obamacare repeal. And I use this, it's not really a sexy fight, right? But I just use that word for whatever reason. Don't ask me why. But everybody was all hands on deck to push back against the repeal of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And yet, don't you guys realize that they are getting ready to gut Medicare and Medicaid? And they had to pass a budget to justify that, to get the reconciliation rules, first of all. But then second of all, they wanted to they made cuts to justify the tax cuts, right? They're trying to balance the budget on the back, and they're not even making a decent effort, but they're trying to balance the budget on the back of people who need Medicare and Medicaid. They're gutting those two programs, and we don't have all hands on deck. Everybody's not talking about it. I mean, seriously, there's very few conversations on Twitter about it. And I realized that today, like, that's exactly why we are going to forever be on the defensive end. We can't even get a progressive tax. I mean, okay, yeah, our tax policy is is moderately progressive, right? But it is not an aggressively progressive policy, right? And they're getting ready to relinquish the responsibility that they have. They're getting ready to reduce the progressive nature of the tax policy. I mean, they are literally getting ready to give billions of dollars away to the president of the United States. They're getting ready to cut what corporations pay. They already get away with murder through tax evasion, and they're getting ready to create a tax holiday where they don't have to pay 35% to repatriate their funds. They're only going to pay 5%. Google, Amazon, they're only going to pay 5% taxation, and they are leaving us with the bill. I cannot stress how important this is. I need every person who listens to me and every person who follows me. I need you to tweet about this tax policy that they're trying to ram down our throats. I mean, everybody wants to talk about the Uranium One deal. All these progressive hosts, like you're spending time talking about how Hillary Clinton was colluding with Russia, and you're not talking about how Republicans are getting ready to rape America economically. Right? And what are we doing? What are we doing if we're not fighting in the realm of taxation? Seriously, like it's hitting me today because I'm realizing we do a whole lot of talking. We do a whole lot of debating. We do a whole lot of arguing about neoliberalism. Well, this is the realm. This is the realm. I'm throwing stuff in here. This is the realm of neoliberalism. If you want to stop the onslaught of neoliberalism, this is the fight. This is the front line. If Republicans get away with this, then it's going to be stuck. We're going to be stuck with it for at least a decade. And then they're going to justify doing this. They're going to create deficits. Here's the play. They're going to cut taxes, which are going to create deficits. And then they're going to use those deficits to justify why they have to cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security even more. This is the plan. And here we are, and all the progressive hosts and independent media. Hang on, let me close this door real quick. Thank you for your patience. I had to close that door because I heard something in my microphone that was disturbing me. Anyway, all these independent progressive media heads, right? You know, I'm going to call this guy by name because God damn, he gets on my nerve. Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore gets on my nerve because he continues to fuel this pointless. It is so pointless for us to be talking about Hillary Clinton right now. And this is the benchmark for which we decide, whether or not somebody is a real progressive. Oh, do you believe Hillary Clinton gave away 20% of our uranium? I don't give a flying shit about the deal with Uranium One because it was done almost 10 years ago. It was done 10 years ago. Hillary Clinton is not the president of the United States. I do not care about that at all. You know what I care about? The fact that Republicans are getting ready to we are already in a new Gilded age. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Republicans don't think that it's good enough. And they're getting ready to do even more. Right? We are literally in an age where the wealthiest people in the world have about $6 trillion in wealth between them. That's more than, according to Ken Klippenstein of Daily Beats, friend of mine. That's more than the UK, that's more than Canada, and that's more than Australia combined. We have a handful of men who have more wealth than 3 developed nations. And we're sitting here talking about the Uranium One deal. And I got to spend time debunking it because apparently this is the latest rave in the progressive circles. You're not progressive if you're not talking about this tax policy. That's the standard right there. If you're not talking about it and fighting against it as fervently as you fought against Hillary Clinton in the primaries, you are not as progressive as Nancy Pelosi, because Nancy Pelosi is out in these streets right now leading the charge. Every time I see her talking about something, she's talking about the tax policy. She's talking about the budget and how they're getting ready to gut Medicare and Medicaid, and how they're going to justify that by decreasing taxes, right? That's how they're going to pay for their tax cuts, even though it's not going to pay for their tax cuts. I'm sorry. What are we doing if we're not fighting on that front? Don't ask me how this podcast on progressive taxation became a punching left exercise. But I swear to God, what the hell are you doing if you're not all hands on deck on this? I'm talking to the independent media. Like, why are you still relitigating the primaries? The Republican Party is getting ready to cut taxes from 35% to 20% for corporations, and we're still here relitigating whether or not Hillary Clinton said super predator and whether or not she was a racist because she said it. Could you please? Can we please wake the hell up and realize that this right here is the biggest fight on our hands right now. And it's a fight that will have ramifications for generations. Do you realize we are still, if you hate the neoliberal paradigm, it was created by Ronald Reagan. It is facilitated through our tax policy. Our tax policy it is what allows wealth to amass at the top. Capitalism. Oh my God. If you're a class critic, if you offer a class critique, why are you spending more time attacking the Democrats right now than attacking the Republican Party, who is out here? Because Ben, if the Democrats were in power, they'll be no. Hush. They are not in power, and they are not the ones getting ready to gut the United States coffers, the coffers through which every program that you ever wanted to do, any social program, universal basic income, Medicare for all, you want Medicare for all, you will not get Medicare for all once they get done gutting the coffers and giving it to the wealthiest. I'm sorry. I would any day of the week put them side by side. Put me a Nancy Pelosi next to a Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore ain't out here in these streets fighting against the Republican. He's spending more time fighting against Hillary Clinton, the ghost of Hillary Clinton's past campaigns. And I'm looking, and the reason I know that Nancy Pelosi is talking about this is because I'm online Googling, I'm looking, I'm like, who's out here talking, who's out in these streets talking about it? Who's talking about it? You get a Paul Krugman here and there, but he's not really talking about it so much as, lofty. He's not really in these streets, right? He's not really talking. I'm looking for people on Twitter. All of my favorites, they're not really talking about it. Nobody's really, hell, I'm looking at my timeline. I'm not even fucking talking about it. And lo and behold, I Google and I stumble onto a speech by Nancy Pelosi talking about show me your budget, show me your values, right? Your budget is a demonstration of your values. And the Republican budget shows that they value corporations. They don't value people. And I'm Googling, I'm like, all right, well, that's Nancy Pelosi. Of course you're going to say that. So I'm gonna keep going. I'm Googling, I'm looking, well, who else is talking about tax policy? Nobody. Republican this. Paul Ryan, his lies. Ted Cruz, his lies. Bernie Sanders gets out there with his talking points, and I appreciate Bernie Sanders' talking points, but Bernie Sanders' talking points are incomplete. I enjoyed the debate last week with Ted Cruz, but it was an incomplete debate. He did not debunk some of the things that needed to be debunked. Number one, tax cuts do not create jobs. Demand for jobs create jobs. He did not take Ted Cruz to school the way he needed to. Yes, don't get it twisted. Bernie Sanders is one of the most, if not the most progressive politician that we have in power right now today, but he did not hit Ted Cruz on tax policy the way we needed him to. So I'm Googling and I stumble onto some stuff from Bernie Sanders. We don't need to give tax back to the top 1%, the top 1%. I agree with you 100%. Right. So I catalog that. I'm looking, who else is talking about this for real? Who has some substance that I can use? Right. Who can I glean something from? And I realized there's a void in the conversation about taxes on the left in progressive circles, in Democratic circles. If we're not going to get it from Democrats, then shouldn't we get it from progressives? But I look at the conversations of progressives and you know what we're talking about? That's right. Relitigating the campaign, relitigating the primaries. So please tell me, if neoliberalism is not only allowed but furthered through tax policy, and the paradigm under which we live right now is the same paradigm that was created by Ronald Reagan in 1981 with the Roth-Kemp tax breaks, if this is the same paradigm that we've been fighting uphill against, right? It's a direct correlation between the tax policy that he signed into law in 1981 and the increase in income inequality and the decrease in our wages, or the stagnation of our wages of workers. If that is the realm in which Neoliberalism has its roots in American society. Why the hell is everyone who's out here calling people neoliberals, why are you not in these streets fighting like hell every single day, debunking trickle-down economics, debunking supply-side economics, debunking the Laffer curve, debunking all of this with every day, all your might? And I'm thinking, I'm actually not just saying it rhetorically to pull somebody's card. I'm actually thinking about it and saying, well, maybe they're not talking about it because they're not versed enough in it. Maybe they don't understand it well enough. Maybe they're not comfortable enough discussing it. And so then it's the responsibility of people who have studied it in great detail to be able to deliver, usable sound bites. And I was like, well, hell, I've studied it in great detail. I've got more knowledge about this than goddamn Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders. Love Bernie Sanders, but there are some gaping holes in what he was arguing last week, right? I was like, okay, so it's our response. Maybe that's what it is, right? So instead of just attacking people who are not talking about tax policy, those of us who know tax policy or at least know how to debunk trickle-down economics, it's incumbent upon us to stop being sucked into these arguments that are irrelevant and take the charge. Right. So it shifted from being angry and punching left to saying, OK, it's our responsibility, my responsibility, the responsibility of the people who know better to do better. But then at the same time, I put a challenge to every single one of you listening to me right now. Research it, study it, learn, read, get your talking points, because that's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against 30 years of lies, of simple talking points that people believe at face value, like cutting taxes stimulates the economy. That's a lie. Cutting taxes do not necessarily stimulate the economy. And because it's such a persistent lie, as well as a pernicious lie, but it's such a persistent lie, we don't have room for nuance in these talking points. I don't even think we should say cutting taxes don't necessarily, because that leaves too much space for nuance interpretation and for them to, no, cutting taxes for the rich does not stimulate the economy, period. End of discussion. End of the discussion. Right. We need to find some very simple talking points that are more true, that are truer than what Republicans have been saying. They have been lying. Cutting taxes creates jobs. That's a lie. Cutting taxes on capitalists or cutting taxes on businesses does not create jobs, because jobs are only created by demand. You are a bad business owner. You are a poor and ignorant capitalist if you create jobs and there's no demand for that new job. Tell me, Ted Cruz, are you going to hire a new person at your lemonade stand if there's not demand for your lemonade stand and you have all this extra lemonade laying around because nobody wants your stuff? If I give you a tax cut, are you going to hire somebody new? That means you don't know how to run a business. And if you don't know how to run a business, you don't know how to run this country. Get out of here. We need simplified talking points on tax policy, and we need to be as passionate about tax policy as we are everything else. And I know that's wishful thinking. Trust me, I know that's wishful thinking. But when you think about how important it is, if you think about the fact that they're going to gut all of the safety nets, they're going to gut the food SNAP programs, they're going to gut the CHIP. They already let the funding for CHIP, right, to lapse. They're going to use it as an excuse to block grant Medicare and to block grant Medicaid. They're going to use it as an excuse to gut everything that we have. Their goal has always been to undo the New Deal. Piece by piece by piece, generation by generation by generation, because a New Deal represents what you owe to society. It represents changing the paradigm from the Gilded Age to say the richest in the society, they owe a debt to the society that's commensurate to what they took from the society. If you take 90% of the wealth, then you owe 90% of what it takes to run the society. And that's the baseline. That's not a progressive tax policy. A progressive tax policy says if you take 90% of the wealth, then you owe 100% of what it costs to run the society. But we're nowhere even near that conversation. We're at the point where the people who are the biggest, fattest, and the greediest sitting at the table are leaving us with the bill. They ate filet mignon. We ate rice and beans, but they're leaving us with the bill. And they're getting up and walking away. we have to become passionate about tax policy, even though it sounds like the most boring thing. It is not. It doesn't drive our passion the way social issues do. And we absolutely do not need to lose an inch of our passion for social issues, right? And identity politics, we do not need to lose our passion for that. I'm sorry. Any progressive who's listening to me who thinks that we should move away from identity politics, I think you're wrong and you're listening to the wrong podcast. We need to be as passionate, though. We need to bring the same passion to this fight, because if you're tired of neoliberalism, then the fight isn't the tax code. The fight is in tax policy. The fight is in how much wealth are they allowed to amass as a result of us. That's the secret, right? They say that here's another lie. Taxation is punishing success. No, motherfucker. No. You listen, you are eating from the same table and you're taking more than everybody else. You are getting away with no responsibility to this society. Do you feel like it's punishment, Ted Cruz, right? Is it punishing you for you to pay your portion of the bill? Are you just going to get up from the table and leave? And if we call you on it, you're going to say that you're being punished? No, that's selfish. That's disingenuous. That's outright theft. That's theft. You are stealing from society. You ate at this table with all of us, the table that all of us created. You ate more than anybody else, and you think you're being punished because we're telling you it's time for you to pay your bill, motherfucker? I'm sorry. No. We have to be passionate about this, and I don't understand. Okay, so I'm trying to understand, right? I'm trying to understand. So maybe it's just not sexy, right? It doesn't drive our passions like other issues, and I think a lot of people just don't understand it. But maybe if we communicate it in this way, you cannot be a socialist, right? You cannot be a socialist and be quiet on this fight, because this is the first round. This is the front line. This is the front line. You're not going to. What are you not going to engage in this because you're waiting on the proletariat revolution? No, that's insanity. The front line of a socialist battle is right here in tax policy. This is the place where we can gain ground. This is the place where we can get concessions for the working class and give the working class an opportunity to breathe. Give the working class Medicare for all. You got to fund it through tax policy. Give them access to Medicare for all. Now they're able to break away from their corporate overlords, because at least they can start a job and not have to worry about not having insurance. They have insurance. Now they're free to gather and organize and plan the proletariat revolution. I'm an idiot. I know. Right? So if you're a socialist, you got to be in this. You got to be fighting for this tax policy. Unless you honestly believe that you have to wait until the entire system is torn down before we. What? Huh? Maybe I need a video, because I need you to see my facial expressions on this. Right? So you have that. Then if you offer a class critique and you don't necessarily consider yourself a socialist, but you see the problems with capitalism, then huh? Why are you not talking about this front and center? Maybe your issues are Black Lives Matter and the black community. And just like me, that's my issue too. That's one of my number one issues. And I know one of the number one problems in the black community is that our communities have been plundered and pilfered for generations. And we have absolutely no wealth compared to that of our white fellow Americans. And you know what affects that? Tax policy. Yes, redlining, all those, all that contributes to it. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what else contributes to it? The fact that Susie, actually Becky, the fact that Becky and Billy can have, access to all sorts of wealth and all sorts of resources at their school, and they totally have all the best books and all the best, but because the schools are funded by property taxes and you don't really have any property taxes in your neighborhood, that you totally have shitty schools. All of that is affected by tax policy. All of it. Poverty is affected by tax policy. Generational poverty affected by tax policy. Health issues affected by tax policy, and the fact that you ain't got no money because you have to pay money into America's system. But we'll never have a different system. We'll never have a single payer Medicare for all because ain't nobody talking about tax policy. Please forgive me as I code switch back and forth between my attempts at proper English and my native tongue. I've got 9% left on this battery. I'm recording via my phone. I think you guys got the picture. I certainly hope that all these progressives are actually more progressive than Nancy Pelosi. Because she and Bernie Sanders are the only people I really see out there that are pounding the pavement on this tax policy that Republicans are. Yeah, everybody, let's go, they'll tweet about it here and there. All right, one or two tweets, one tweet a day or something. This is just as important as the Obamacare repeal. You know why? Because if Medicare and Medicaid are significant parts of Obamacare, of the Affordable Care Act, and they're going to use this tax plan to do away with or to justify. It's going to create deficits, and those deficits are going to be used as excuses to block grant Medicare and, put a significant dent in the number of people who can get and the type of coverage that people can get access to. So this fight, therefore, is just as important. I'm going to try to say it without even getting exciting here. So calling all progressives, mic check. Can you hear me? All progressives. You can't possibly let Nancy Pelosi out progressive you. Because this is Armageddon. She called it that. And I agree. This is an economic Armageddon, and we need to be raising hell. We need to be on our phones every day and make these politicians realize if they vote for Paul Ryan and Donald Trump's tax plan, we are voting them out. And we're going to put all of our energy, we're going to put everything in our life, just as much. We're going to put more into it than we did with Obamacare. And unless we have that passion, we have lost. And neoliberalism, not the Democratic Party version of neoliberalism that drives you crazy, but the coked out, meth out version of neoliberalism that's like on cocaine and steroids all in one, hocked up with no compassion whatsoever. That type of neoliberalism, the kind that thinks that the Gilded Age was the good old days. That level of neoliberalism is about to smack you in the face. And Nancy Pelosi knows it. Bernie Sanders knows it. A couple other politicians know it. But where is the universal energy around stopping this tax plan? It's up to you, the listener. It's up to me, the broadcaster. It's up to all these other progressive platforms, people I didn't call out, people I did call out. It's up to every single one of us to put some energy and some fire behind this fight, because this is an economic Armageddon, and the Republicans are not satisfied with the Gilded Age, which we are already in. They want the evolution of the Gilded Age. And the rest of us, while they're living in the best of times, well, you know the rest of it, will be suffering in the worst of times. Catch you next time.